The regular legislative session is still underway up in Baton Rouge, but Louisianians are still trying to digest the dozens of bills that came out of that special session on crime.
Yeah, one of them, signed into law, will make docket details for juveniles who commit violent crimes public record here. This hits a nerve of victims of violent crime, as our Leah McNeil explains.
Where do you start when the sights of crime scenes, sounds of sirens, and ever-flowing tears for loved ones lost become the norm? You start with the victims, says Laura Canizero Rodriguez.
The focus went away from victims.
She's coming off a stint as the chairperson for the Criminal Justice Committee with Governor Jeff Landry. But for the last year, she's been supporting a bill she says puts victims first.
It all started with many victims saying they weren't aware of what was happening in court.
The first draft of the legislation targeted 3 parishes. It would make each clerk of court create a free public online database that would include docket information for criminal court, like the judge, which courtroom, who's the suspect, and what charges they're facing. It failed in the last regular legislative session, but this year was a different story.
So the information that's being made accessible now to the public is information that's already public record. It's just being made accessible to the public now in a way that's easy to use.
This year's bill was recently signed into law. It applies to all clerks of court in the state. The database will also include docket information for juveniles who commit violent crime.
We really want to know what's happening in terms of what cases are being accepted, if they're not being accepted, why, and for so many of the victims, it was even more important to monitor what's happening by the judges.
When you become a victim, you're nobody's priority.
On December 18th, 2022, Brandon Boogie B. Montrell was caught in the crossfire of a shooting in the Warehouse District.
Devastating.
Sherilyn Price, Brandon's mother, says while the gunman was not underage, she's poured her everything into supporting legislation she says holds everyone accountable.
I heard nothing. Nobody talked to me about anything. And there's things that you're entitled to know every step of the way, but it doesn't often happen. There needed to be an avenue for victims, and anybody who becomes a victim will understand this.
But Tamara Jackson.
My father was murdered actually 23 years ago.
She wants accountability too, but feels this legislation missed the mark.
We're punishing juvenile offenders and we come in hard. Right, but we're not offering any supportive services, no rehabilitation.
Working with the Silence is Violence nonprofit for the last 20 years, Jackson's focus is on victim services, youth engagement, and public advocacy. She says releasing juvenile court information, regardless of how much or how little, is dangerous.
I think it can be detrimental, especially for the person who offended the family or another individual. It creates an opportunity for retribution. It happens on the adult spectrum, so what you think about with a child? What safeguards do we put in place when we're saying we're releasing this information to the public?
Price says it's not as dangerous as the ones committing these crimes.
I had to plan a funeral. I had to pick out a casket. You don't have to do that when your child's name is on the internet, because that won't kill them. People are acting like that's the worst outcome, that these kids can be exposed. No, the worst outcome is that these kids can kill somebody.
The feelings on both sides are strong.
Tell me again about these juveniles and their exposures and their names being on the internet. I would rather their names be on the internet than their mothers have to bury them.
This is really going to impact Black and brown communities. I don't think this legislation would have been put on the table if it was for other populations of people.
But no matter what side you fall on, all agree the root causes of crime need to be addressed.
These children are rebelling in the streets because they're tired of not having enough. Not enough food, not enough stability, not enough parenting, not enough love.
We got systemic issues, generational trauma. And until we put measures in to heal the hurt and the pain, we're going to continue to see what we see every day, the trajectory of violence.
I think that when you talk about passing legislation that gets to the root cause of crime, there is nobody that would say that they were against that.
Canizero Rodriguez says this is just a place to start.
You know, a year ago, we were the murder capital of the United States. So the fact that we are already there means we have to take quick action to address the crime that's already happening.